Imagine a kind, fragile old grandpa, the type who'd help you cross the road or offer you a sweet. Now, what if I told you that under that gray hair and shaky smile was a demon that even horror movies couldn't invent? A man who didn't just kill, he hunted, he tortured, and he actually ate his victims. Today, we're peeling back the skin on the life of Albert Fish, the real-life Hannibal Lecter. This isn't just a story, it's a descent into pure madness. Stick around, because by the end of this, you'll never look at a friendly stranger the same way again. Welcome back to Truthful. To understand Albert, we have to go back to 1870, Washington D.C. But the rot started even before he was born. Albert's family tree was a literal forest of madness. His uncle was insane, his brother was in an asylum, and his own mother was hearing voices that weren't there. When Albert was just 5, his 75-year-old father died, leaving him in a brutal orphanage. This wasn't a home, it was a torture chamber. The staff used to whip the children until they couldn't stand. But something broke inside Albert's brain. Instead of feeling terror, he felt a rush. He started connecting pain with pleasure. This sadomasochism became his oxygen. He grew up as a social ghost, a man who lived in the shadows of New York, working as a painter, while his inner demons were screaming for blood. Here's the thing that'll blow your mind. Albert Fish was a father of 6. Yeah, you heard that right. While he was out in the streets looking for victims, he was going home to tuck his own kids into bed. But his house wasn't a normal home. He was a bizarre parent. He used to force his own children to beat him with paddles that had nails sticking out of them. He claimed he needed to purify his soul through agony. By the 1920s, he had perfected his grandpa persona. He was a master of disguise. He traveled all over the United States, Chicago, Delaware, Florida. Everywhere he went, children started vanishing into thin air. At that time, the police didn't have computers or shared databases. A missing kid in one city was just a local tragedy, and no one suspected the polite elderly painter who had just moved into town. He was the ultimate chameleon, blending into the background while leaving a trail of shattered families behind him. Now we get to the case that finally broke the world's heart, Grace Budd. In 1928, a young man named Edward Budd put an ad in the paper looking for work. Albert Fish rocked up to their house calling himself Mr. Howard. He looked so dapper, so kind, and so harmless that the Budd family welcomed him with open arms. He sat at their table, ate their bread, and played with their children, but his eyes were locked on 10-year-old Grace. He conned her parents into letting him take her to a birthday party. He promised her strawberry ice cream and a night of fun. Instead, he took her to a lonely, derelict shack known as Wisteria Cottage in Westchester County. There were no neighbors for miles. What happened in that cottage is the stuff of nightmares. Fish didn't just end her life, he treated it like a twisted ritual. He spent 9 days in that house, doing things so graphic that even today, most documentaries won't mention the details. He was a 64-year-old man with the cold, calculated heart of a monster. For 6 years, Grace's parents waited for a daughter who was already gone, while Fish lived his life as if nothing had happened. The case of Grace Budd went cold for years, leaving the police completely clueless and the family in a state of eternal agony. But Albert Fish had an ego the size of a mountain, a dark pride that he just couldn't keep to himself. In 1934, he sat down and wrote a detailed letter to Grace's mother. It was written on private stationery and described every single horrific and unthinkable thing he did to her daughter in that lonely cottage. He wanted her to feel his triumph, to taste his sick satisfaction. But that very letter became his one-way ticket to the electric chair. Detectives meticulously traced the paper back to a rooming house in Manhattan, leading them straight to the monster's door. When they finally arrested the man known as the Gray Man, they found a predator who didn't even bother to deny his crimes. But the real shock, the moment that turned the investigators' blood cold, came during the medical exam. The doctors took an X-ray of his lower body and froze in pure disbelief. They saw dozens of sharp, metallic objects deeply embedded in his flesh. It turned out Albert had pushed 29 sewing needles so deep into his own body that they were resting against his spine and bladder, where they had stayed for decades. It proved to the world that this man didn't feel pain like a normal human being. He was a biological freak, a man whose nervous system was as twisted and broken as his very soul. The trial of Albert Fish quickly became a media circus, with his lawyers desperately pushing the insanity plea. bringing in experts to claim he was completely off his nut. They talked about his pica disorder, how he possessed a hunger for non-food items, and his severe, crumbling schizophrenia. But the prosecution was sharper and more relentless. They proved that Fish was a perfectionist who cleaned his crime scenes, used fake names, and avoided the law for years with genius-level precision. That isn't a madman. That is a calculated genius predator. On January 16th, 1936, at the infamous Sing Sing prison, the long journey of terror finally ended. Fish walked to the electric chair with a chilling smirk on his face. He actually helped the executioner strap him into the seat, famously saying it was the only thrill he hadn't tried yet. When they flipped the switch, something bizarre and unexpected happened. The first jolt of 2,000 volts caused a massive short circuit, likely because of the 29 metal needles still hidden inside his body. It took a second, even more massive surge, to finally stop his black heart forever. As the smoke cleared, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief. The man who hunted the innocent was finally gone, buried in an unmarked grave, leaving behind a legacy of pure, unadulterated evil. The story of Albert Fish isn't just a simple tale of murder. It's a terrifying window into the darkest, most unreachable corners of the human psyche. He proved that monsters don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes, they're standing right in front of us, masked by a friendly smile, a gentle voice, and gray hair. If this story chilled you to the bone, make sure to hit that like button. And let me know in the comments, do you think Albert Fish was truly insane? Or was he just a calculated demon hiding in plain sight? For more truthful and bone-chilling stories that dig deep into the mystery of evil, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Next time you cross paths with a polite stranger, just remember, not every face can be trusted. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. See you in the next one.